Big thanks to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video. Mr. Foxglove is 1 blue, 1 white, 1 green, and 2 other for a 3/5 Fox Rogue with lifelink. It says whenever Mr. Foxglove attacks, draw cards equal to the number of cards in defending player's hand, minus the number of cards in your hand. And if you didn't draw cards this way, you can put a creature card from your hand right onto the battlefield. Jake, it feels like there's a lot of different ways we can build this.
Yeah, man, this seems pretty strong, and it's a good thing there are a lot of ways, because there are at least 3 ways to build most EDH decks.
Strong.
Fun.
And mean.
Let's take a look at the strong, fun, and mean ways that we would build Mr. Foxglove from Magic the Gathering's Bloomburrow.
Enormous shout out to all of our little critters over on our Patreon. You are the bloom in our burrow, and we couldn't do it without you. Y'all are the cutest creatures around. You all get 1 boop on your snoot each.
Big thank you to Wizards of the Coast for this sponsored video, and a huge shout out to all of our patrons that power the channel through Patreon. Go and head on over to Patreon if you want to check out our different tiers and get involved with the channel on a deeper level.
The main thing I see with Mr. Foxglove is that we're going to be keeping our hand very full. We don't have to necessarily rely on a draw step or even have any cards in our hand to be able to play effectively, because Foxglove is going to be constantly filling our hand up. I'm interested in cards like Solitary Confinement with Foxglove. Beginning of your upkeep, you sack it unless you discard a card. You don't have a draw step anymore, but you have Shroud and damage can't be dealt to you. You're basically in an impenetrable bubble from within which you can refill your hand and fulfill the other parts of Solitary Confinement with our own commander.
Yeah, dude, this card is very strong. This is one of those cards that's just like, oh man, it's so pesky. You need to be running enchantment removal just in case you run across a Solitary Confinement. And yeah, because Foxglove has draw built into it, we don't need to depend on our draw step, like you said, or even having a bunch of draw spells in our deck, which you typically want to do in Commander, because having more cards means more answers, and more answers means you're going to be probably better and more well suited to win the game. And a similar card is Island Sanctuary for 1 white and 1 other. If you would draw a card during your draw step, instead you may skip that draw. And if you do, until your next turn, you can't be attacked except by creatures with flying and or island walk. So a little bit of like a pseudo moat action going on here. Yeah, this is a pretty interesting card as well.
I love it when you don't have to rely on your own draw step or drawing cards, because your commander's just going to let you refill your entire hand. Speaking of drawing cards, Jake, 1 damage to each opponent every time you draw a card, and PT equal to number of cards in hand. Highlander, draw your 2nd card, create a token. Your 5th card, they're getting huge. Card draw strategies, these types of cards are what you want to be running in here, just for the sheer amount of like draw 4 at once, draw 6 at once that you can accomplish.
Yeah, each opponent is very good too. So cards like Psychosis Crawler are really attractive because you could just kind of burn your opponent down. And this one's cool. This one goes wide, and then Alondra is a card that's going to need to be answered, especially if we're getting to a point where we're drawing a lot of cards. Then yeah, we're going to be cracking in for a lot of damage.
As long as you know that you have drawn your first card in the turn, if that happened, if you can draw at least 4, if you haven't drawn a single other one on the attack with your Fox, you can attack with Alondra at the same time, and they're all going to get that +X on the attack, just because you will draw with your Fox trigger before you actually have the damage going through. Body of Knowledge, another card draw card. These are the types of synergies that I think are really going to play well here. Dealt damage, draw that many cards. Another type of, reliquary effect here with no maximum hand size. And then just power of your hand being majorly full. I think that's where we want to live.
Yeah, it has the Reliquary Tower text on it, spellbook text, that kind of thing. And yes, as we're dealing damage, we're drawing even more cards. At this point, we're drawing so many cards, we might even want to run Thoracle in here just as like a win con that we're not casting Demonic Consultation to go find, obviously. Can be a more realistic Thoracle moment. But because Foxglove is attacking, and it is on the attack that the cards are being drawn, so we don't even have to get through with Foxglove. However, it would be good if we could, and so let's give Mr. Foxglove unblockable, right? Psychic Paper is one of these cards that's pushed Whisper Silk Cloak into the fringes of MTG. And there's so many cards that come out that power creep some of our favorite boomer staples from when Joel and I first started playing.
Yes.
But Psychic Paper is a good one.
Yep, as is Brotherhood Regalia. Both of these are going to give a little bit of ward, a little bit of some creature type stuff that doesn't really matter and can't be blocked. That's really the relevant piece here. I love equip legendary creature for 1. That is why Brotherhood Regalia is so good and will stay that way for a long time. Jake, I mentioned paying life. We're drawing cards, we're attacking. How about some big creatures that we can cheat onto the battlefield, like an 8/8 here that we can just drop, but more specifically, some 8/8 that has to do with paying life. We're gaining a ton of life with our Foxglove getting through, hopefully. How about a creature that the only downside is you got to pay life to untap it?
I mean, this is one of those cards where it can't be blocked, so you got a big old 8/8 to swing through. This is just a casual, fun card that seems like it just works well in Mr. Foxglove. This isn't like some hidden tech where you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to break the game. No, it's just a little bit of love for a card that maybe probably doesn't see a ton of play.
I need to find a home for Phyrexian Colossus whenever I can. And in a deck that cheats out big creatures and gains life, I'm like, come on, this is where we want to be right here.
It has to be the place for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this card, this little known gem that no one really has figured out is honestly pretty good. Joel and I have been doing some digging into the barren wasteland of unplayed MTG cards, and we have stumbled across Roaming Throne here while we were roaming the deserts of cards for Mr. Foxglove. And yeah, this says when it ETBs, choose a creature type, and it is the chosen type in addition to its other types, but this is the text that matters. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So our Fox Rogue, whenever it is doing its attack trigger, we are getting an additional trigger. Seems good.
All that in mind, there are 3 main ways that Jake and I really want to build Foxglove that we're going to go over. The first of which is sort of a birthing pod neoform build. We've got the right colors, Jake, to chain our ETB or strong creatures right out of our deck and onto the battlefield.
And we're going to use it to go find exactly the creatures we need for each moment throughout the game. And for the fun option in this, we're just going to do a fox that's in charge of an army of dragons. Why not? It's just going to be Bant Dragons going on. It's going to be a lot of fun. It seems like, you know, I could see a fox riding a dragon. Maybe in this set, we're going to have a dragon that gets turned into a fox. Who even knows? Yeah,
we're slamming down huge creatures with Foxglove, so we thought it'd be fun to take the restriction of a dragon deck without black or red in it and see what we could put together. For the mean way to build this, we're cheating in creatures, so let's take advantage of some huge enters the battlefield effects, but let's also blink those a lot. Let's just get insane value off of stuff that we've cheated in, and now we're going to blink it, get those ETBs again, and just probably tilt the whole table off.
Yuck.
If we're going to build a birthing pod deck, we might as well start with the namesake of the entire strategy. It's an activated ability for 2. You tap it, sack a creature, search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1, plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library only at sorcery speed. Jake, I think the best example of something like this is you're able to run creatures that may specifically say something like, when it enters the battlefield, destroy target enchantment, because you're going to be able to more reliably go and get exactly that little tech, whether it's enchantment destruction, whether it's creature removal, something that you need at that moment.
Like potting away a Sakura Tribe Elder to go get a Rex Sage would be a good example of something like this. Or like late game, if you were to pot away a 6 cost to go grab a big 7 cost. Like, I'm going to get rid of my Wormcoil engine so I can go get Elish Norn or something like that. Birthing Pod has a lot of different unique utilities to it, and it's just going to provide this deck a little bit more, I would say, you know, accuracy, right? Where Foxglove is kind of this thing that's cheating like a lottery out of our hand.
Right.
Birthing Pod's going to be the kind of thing that's like, oh, well, I didn't really need that card right now, we'll pod that away. And because we are in green, we're going to be able to get stuff back. But in order to find our birthing pod, we're going to run something like Fabricate, right? That way we can just search it up, search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is just a strong generic tutor that goes to find a perfect artifact. And then like Birthing Pod, we have some other cards in the deck like Neoform, which is similar to Pod. And then also Eldritch Evolution as well, which is going to do kind of the same effect.
Yeah, some nice redundancy on that ability with Birthing Pod. We're running so many creatures in here. This is just such a nice complementary strategy to what Foxglove is already trying to do. Obviously, with Birthing Pod, we can go get it with a card like Fabricate. Neoform and Eldritch Evolution, we can only use once and only if we find them. So let's get some further redundancy on cards like that with Mystical Tutor. Anything that's going to go search up an instant or sorcery so that we can use Neoform or Eldritch Evolution consistently when we need it to happen. Then if we've used them, Jake, we can also run stuff like Noxious Revival, get it back, put a card from the graveyard on top of its owner's library. Instant speed for no mana, by the way. But what we're looking for really is redundancy. That's the point of all the cards that you're seeing here, especially cards like Prime Speaker Vanifar. This is essentially Birthing Pod's ability just on another permanent.
Yeah, this could be, if you wanted to run a Birthing Pod commander, this is the one, right?
100%.
Like this is the way to go. But yeah, Prime Speaker is good. And like Jill was talking about with Noxious Revival, we're in green, so we can go Eternal Witness. We can go Evolution Witness. There's so many different witnesses and cards that we could play to get stuff back from the graveyard and play these abilities again and again, even if we can't find the Birthing Pod, for example. So because we are running big ETBs and stuff like that, we're going to run stuff like Solitude. It can be put onto the battlefield with the Fox.
We can have a 4-mana creature on the battlefield, and if we just need to exile any creature on the battlefield, just get rid of it, we just pod away our 4-mana creature, go get our Solitude. So we've got options, but this is the kind of creatures that you're going to want to look for. And we'll look even more at this when we get to the Blink section, because cards like this would obviously be good in Blink. You're going to want to run similar types of creatures across some of these different strategies. Cards like Wargate, being able to go and get exactly what we want, a combo creature, a finisher. It's a permanent card, so this is another way to go get your Birthing Pod if you really want to. Using cards like this is what we're trying to do, so let's just lean in and run Wargate, which is going and getting exactly what we need when we need it.
I love Wargate. This is such a fun tutor that goes and finds anything, and it's expensive, and rightfully so, because you're getting exactly what you want and putting it into play.
Then we're not running a token deck by any means, but we are running a creature deck, and creatures are going to be entering the battlefield pretty consistently. So finding any of these cards like Galadriel that says whenever a creature's entering the battlefield under your control, whenever you cast a creature, if you've got 20 to 30 creatures in the deck and that's where you're focusing your strategy, let's get some extra value off of them.
Yeah, this seems like a really good choice. It's also modal as well. It's going to allow us to do different things. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Galadriel.
Getting to scry 2 and draw a card on top of Foxglove's attack trigger already, insane.
So the fun way that we're going to build this is we're going to go with Bant Dragons. We've also got some dinosaurs in here. And Ojutai Soul of Winter is a cool old card, little 5/6 flying Vigi. And on the attack, we're tapping a non-land permanent and opponent controls, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Pretty cool.
Yeah, big stompy creatures. Foxglove can cheat stuff onto the battlefield. So let's look at creature types that have an insane converted mana cost average. Dragons, dinosaurs, either's a good way to take this. If you're running dragons, look for cards that say whenever a dragon, when a dragon does this, when a dragon does that. That's what you want to be looking for when you're building your Kindred deck. Ojutai is great. Dragon Lord, Dromica, just generically good here. Can't be countered, flying lifelink. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn is pretty sweet to cheat onto the battlefield, right? Because they can't respond to this in really any way. Suddenly all of their instants are turned off, at least during your turn. Nice little pop up out of nowhere. We've got some good support for dragons, Jake, in Bant colors. And so I like building restrictions personally. I know not everybody's a fan of them, but you know, if you're going into a creature type like this, having some of the cards that aren't normally as played as your main cards is kind of fun. Corlessa here letting us look at the top card of our library anytime and cast dragon spells from the top of our library.
Yes, dude, this card is great. It's like a Oracle of Moldiah for dragons at a reduced cost. That's kind of cool. We also have Renari here, Merchant of Marvels. For 1 blue and 3 other, we get a 2/4, and you may cast dragon spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. So kind of like what Joel was just talking about in here. We're not cheating Dramoka onto the battlefield with Foxglove. We could use Renari and flash it in that way.
Yep. Look into the Bant Dragons if you want to play that route. There's also Bant Dinosaurs that you can go. Into last year, we got LCI, and that gave us a ton of dinosaur support, really expanding the color pie offerings that we can choose from when we're building a dinosaur commander deck. Zatalpa, obviously the OG. This would just be like one of the most fun and insane creatures to cheat in. You know, if you can get Foxglove out early or get a haste going, you got 4 turn 5. You're throwing Zatalpa down. People are like, okay, yeah, anybody got a Swords to Plowshares?
It's just such an annoying card to deal with, dude. And yeah, if you can cheat big stuff out, why not? We're also in green, so we could be playing ramp. We could play the mana dorks that are going to let us get Foxglove online earlier as well. Galta and Mavrin, this was a card that came out of March of the Machine. We got all these crazy team ups that came out of that set in our Magic the Gathering kind of like Avengers Endgame before we actually get to Marvel. But yeah, Galta and Mavrin, this is an interesting card, and yeah, it's just big abilities, also modal, so we're getting to do different things with it depending on the situation.
Fun to cheat out there. Also, that whenever you attack on this one in particular, it doesn't have to attack itself, and it'll get to create an XX creature token with trample, where X is the greatest power among attacking creatures. Really fun there. Or you can go wide if you want to with this dinosaur vampire. Also want to point out that Karuga's a dinosaur. Yes. You don't have to build it as your companion to cheat it onto the field and draw a card for each other permanent you control with CMC 3 or greater. Find cards that are going to have these good ETBs, that are going to have this just like unmistakable value or strength on the battlefield. And then whenever you're dropping stuff for free, people are really going to be hate it. But Jake, regardless of which large creature type we're running and how free we can make things, let's have a backup plan of reducing the cost so that we can actually cast them. How about that?
Urza's Incubator, yeah, I mean, it's going to thrive more if we choose a direct lane, right? So whether we go dinosaurs or whether we go dragons or whatever other creature type, Urza's Incubator is just one of those cards that for a 3 mana investment, making everything of that type 2 less is just so stupidly good. There's a reason why this card was so expensive for so long.
Mean is definitely how I would describe the strategy of Blink, Jake. Blink seeks to take creatures that have good enters the battlefield abilities or leaves the battlefield abilities, and it does something called blink them. It makes them exiled from the battlefield, and then they come back and they are a new version of themselves, meaning anything that was targeting them is no longer targeting them, equipped to them in some cases, that kind of thing. They're a brand new version of themselves. And they're going to get the enters the battlefield abilities again. Jake, cards like Astral Dragon, they play into the theme of cheating in high CMC creatures. This says when it ETBs, create 2 tokens that are copies of target non-creature permanent, except they're 3/3 dragons in addition to their other types, and they have flying. So this ETBs, I now have 2 3/3 dragon soul rings that can tap for 4 mana or attack for 3 each if I need them to.
Or Ristic Studies, or, you know, whatever gross kind of disgusting thing you want to do with it. Yeah, Blink is one of those things. I thought you were going to say earlier that it destroys the soul. And I think that's what we're trying to do with Mean here. Yeah, once a Blink engine is fully online, there's really not much that you can do about it. Moonshaker Cavalry, this is one of those cards, 8 cost. This is a beautiful thing to be cheating out. I like barely got to this in limited, and it's one of those cards that it's like, you know, unless you're playing Commander, unless you're playing limited, this card is probably not going to be hard cast unless you're trying to cheat it out, and that's what we're trying to do here with Mr. Foxglove. So Moonshaker Cavalry, this is the white Crater Hoof. Green Crater Hoof should probably be in here too, depending on, or if we're going wide. But yeah, you probably want to be playing the Air Crater Hoof for sure.
100%. Being able to blink something like this, the ETB triggers again and again. Cards like Agent of Treachery, entering, we steal anything we want. If we're able to blink that, we get that gain control of target permanent ability again. And that's what we want to be doing. We're going to use cards that have one-off blinks on them, like Charming Prince. Exile another target creature you own, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. This may look like small beans, but I need y'all to understand.
It's big beans.
It comes into play and does it once, and then if it itself gets caught in the crossfire of any of your multiple blink cards that let your whole team blink, or multiple creatures blink, it comes in and blinks a thing again, and you're starting to get blink chains going. Charming Prince is insane, as is Rune of the Hidden Realm for that like repeatable blink.
This is an old commander here. This was for people that were blinking in Bant years ago. And yeah, Rune, this definitely needs to be in the deck. If we're going blink, this is just some additional redundancy, and it's a good spot to be.
You can use blink offense or defense. This one is interesting because the creature's not coming right back immediately like some blink effects do. This blink effect returns it at the beginning of the next end step. It also says exile another target creature, not creature you control. So if a creature's attacking you, pay 2, tap this, exile it. It's going to come back at the beginning of your next end step. It's just not attacking me anymore.
Yeah, defensive, offensive. This is such a strong card, and there's a reason why it was a commander and is still a commander. I'm saying was. I'm sure that there's still plenty of people that have a Rune deck.
Oh, 100%.
And then Thassa does the same kind of thing, right? Is we, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to one other target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. This is just a way to passively blink stuff, get even more value out of your field.
Yeah, imagine Astral Dragon cheated in with your Foxglove. Thassa's already on the battlefield, flipping it back at the beginning of every single end turn you have. You're just creating 3/3s that are copies of any permanents. Obviously, the OG to do this, Conjurer's Closet, beginning of your end step, same as Thassa, exile a creature you control, return it to the battlefield.
Yep.
And then if you're having a bunch of ETBs, you might as well run Panharmonicon, because all those creatures' ETBs are now going to be doubled with an effect like this. You can see how we're getting mean, Jake. We're getting a little bit mean. And I wanted to just like as a cherry on top of the mean section, we're attacking with Foxglove. And now Reconnaissance has just gotten a reprint, and it's got the relevant reminder text. They changed the reminder text so that people know the tricksy way that this works, which is attack with Foxglove, let the combat damage happen. Before we exit combat, remove target attacking creature we control. So if we can get through and damage, we can still untap and rock and roll with Foxglove untapped. But Foxglove's triggers on the attack. You don't need it to get through if you don't need it to. You attack, you pull it out of combat. It's just more protection for Foxglove. I just thought that this protection, this belongs in the mean section.
Reconnaissance is one of those cards that is very mean, and it's also a card that's a little bit complicated as well for like players that aren't super familiar or fluent with each individual step of how a Magic game works. This is going to be one of those cards that you're going to be tricky with.
Hey, do us a favor, leave us a comment down there how you would build Mr. Foxglove, and if you want to see any commanders in the future on 3 ways to build, let us know that as well.
Big thank you again to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring this video. We really appreciate it, and it has been such a pleasure working on this. And yeah, there's a lot of really fun commanders in this set, so if this isn't the one for you, then I'm sure that there's one out there that is.